much, Madam Chair, and welcome, Minister Bryson. It's always great to have an opportunity to delve a little deeper into particular issues with you here at committee. The supplementary estimates C were one of likely two last chances for the government to include whatever appropriations might be required to keep the Canadian Nuclear Laboratories employees in the public service pension plan. I noticed that there does not seem to be anything in supplementary estimates C about that. I know you're familiar with the issue because yourself and Minister Carr have been meeting with the unions involved for the workers who are facing essentially being shut out of their pension plan, and the deadline for that is this September, which is why there's so few opportunities for government to appropriate whatever funds might be necessary. When you were last here in November, I had asked for the costing of that. So a decision is going to get made one way or another before September. Either a decision will be made to allow them back into that pension plan, or by default, they'll be pushed out if the government does nothing. Do you have the costing for what the financial impact for government would be to keep those employees in the plan?
Thank you very much, Daniel. I'd like to start, and then I'll call on Yaprak as well on this issue. The Harper government's decision to sell off AECL has had a very significant impact on CNL employees. We understand that. We're doing everything we can to offer pension protection for employees affected by that sell-off. It is not possible for CNL employees to remain in the public service pension plan as they are no longer public servants. But we are currently working to bring in regulations that will protect the employees' pension eligibility, with the goal that those new regulations would be in place prior to September. You cited September as being an important date in terms of
those regulations.
So the regulations
would they allow them to stay in the plan or not?
Well, it would ensure that the duration of the current and future employment with CNL and their age of retirement, it will be used to determine their eligibility for an unreduced pension under the public service pension plan for their service to the date of the transfer. And the regulations will help mitigate and adverse effects on pension benefits by allowing also survivor benefits, and in situations where these employees marry or enter into common law relationships or have a child while employed by CNL. And again,
is it the position of the government then that there won't be anything done to have those employees be able to stay in the plan past September? Well, what you're talking about is trying to facilitate the existing benefits for up to the cutoff date, but not to continue those employees within the pension plan.
The issue we have, Daniels, is that if somebody is no longer a public servant, it is not possible for them to continue to participate.
Awkward employment situation, isn't it, though? Because, I mean, CNL is not the employer of the employer is a company, if they are the employer, because the employees stay with CNL regardless of who gets the management contract. So, and I think that's a 5-year management contract. So so a private contractor comes in to manage the assets of CNL, including the employees. They're not technically the employer, because if the management contract changes, those same employees will stay with CNL. They'll be managed by the new contractor. So are the employees CNL employees? And where exactly does CNL fit if CNL is not the employer? Or are they the employer? And then there's a management contractor. I mean, it seems to me to be a deliberately vague employment scenario, the consequence of which is that while these employees won't be the employees of whoever's managed or hired to manage the assets of CNL, they kind of remain with CNL as if they continue to work for government, just as the assets nominally remain government assets. But the effect is that they're shut out of some of the benefits of working for government. I mean, that seems to me to be a strange a strange way to structure the management of those assets. And the only real obvious substantive outcome is that those employees are shut out of the pension plan.
These are good points that can help inform regulations. And as Yaprak and Renee and other public servants are engaged in that, that is something that you may want to add something further to.
One of the concerns going forward is that if government doesn't intervene to change the model, one of the ways they could do that would be to try and come to an arrangement where these effectively civil servants, even though not in name, but they continue to remain with an arm's length company that technically owns government assets, although contracts out management of those assets. One way to do that would be to allow them to remain in the plan. This seems to me to be a bad precedent for government workers, where government can set up a shell company, transfer its assets and the employees in some strangely defined way, and say, you're going to continue to remain the people who maintain these assets and work with these assets. You're going to have a different manager from time to time. And by the way, you can't have your pension anymore. And that seems to me to be a bad model if you're looking at it from the point of view of the people who have maintained these assets for decades.
The genesis of this, of course, was the decision of the previous government to sell the asset. What we have is that people who were public servants and as such participated in the public service pension plan are not, who are not going to be public servants, and that I think is the nub of.
I think the government can make
thank
it
you,
right
Mr.
by
Blaikie.
deeming
We're
them
seeking
public
ways
servants.
through the regulations to help ameliorate some of
Thank you.
those issues.